How we doing, everybody, and welcome in to Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trag. I'm your host, Trag. It is Wednesday. We're already at Wednesday, right? We had that Memorial Day weekend, the shortened work week. We're at Wednesday already, May 29th. May 29th, it's almost June. We're talking about some decent weather. I mean, it almost feels like it's summer. It's getting there, right? It's getting there. I never thought we'd get there. I thought it was going to rain every single day. I think we saw the sun for the first time in central Wisconsin, and I can't even tell you how long. Probably about 5 days. Feels like the sun just went away. We were just going to deal with some cloudy skies and rain. We had rain yesterday. There, but finally, might have a break from it for a little bit here. Maybe, just maybe, some of the farmers out there can actually get out in the fields. I don't know. Around here, talking to some of the farmers, I mean, there ain't a whole lot happening. A lot of them are getting a little ticked off. So it is going to be great to see some of the weather get a little bit nicer. But, I mean, with that, not a whole lot happening in Wisconsin sports. You know, we had the Brewer game last night. I want to talk about that. We have a little bit of baseball news on the national schedule. So I want to look at that there. And then also just fly around the league. I want to fly around the league today, see kind of where everyone was sitting around the league there in yesterday's action and where everybody's at in the standings right now. And then also I kind of want to look at the NBA. Look at the NBA playoffs, see where everybody's sitting right now. You know, we saw the Boston Pacers series, fantastic stuff, right? If you were cheering against the Pacers, fantastic stuff. And then I want to look at that Mavs Timberwolves series, a little bit of the same makings as that Pacers and Celtics, but watching it right now, potentially the Timberwolves going to force a game 5. So good stuff there. So right away, I want to look at the national scale for the MLB. I want to talk about the big story coming out of yesterday, and that was the MLB will now incorporate Negro League statistics into the record books. Now, a lot of you out there might say, well, that doesn't matter. Like, you know, who cares? Whatever. You know, what's that really going to do to the MLB stats and everything like that? And it made a major shakeup. And I'm just going to go through a couple of them just because they haven't technically, as of today, they will incorporate all those stats into the books. But I saw a couple of interesting ones that, I mean, were just in the articles that they came out with there yesterday and will actually shake up the record books quite, a decent amount there. So the first one, that I saw there was that Josh Gibson will actually be the career leader in batting average. He actually hit 372 one season. That will actually surpass Ty Cobb's 367 record there. I mean, we've been looking up and seeing Ty Cobb hitting 367 for a very long time, and now we have a guy like Josh Gibson who is a fantastic hitter in his own right. We'll see a lot of stats from Gibson there, but he is about to surpass what we're seeing from Ty Cobb. Actually, Gibson hit 466 in 1953, or 1943, my mistake there, 1943 for the Homestead Grays, and that actually became the season standard. And then you look at even another guy in Charlie Chino Smith who hit 451 for the New York Lincoln Giants in 1929 there. That actually took over Hugh Duffy's record of 440 there in the when he played for the National League's Boston team in 1894 there. Also, you look at Gibson, he becomes the career leader in slugging percentage, 718, and OPS, 1.177, moving ahead of Babe Ruth, who was 690 there in slugging percentage and 1.164 in OPS. So Gibson making some noise there for himself right away in the stat books, in the record books. Now that they're putting these Negro League stats there into the MLB stats. Commissioner of Baseball Rob Manfred said this initiative is to focus on ensuring the future generations of fans have access to the statistics and milestones of all those who made the Negro Leagues possible. Their accomplishments on the field will be a gateway to broader learning about the triumph to American history on the path that led to Jackie Robinson's 1947 Dodger debut. I get why they're doing it. I do. And they said one of the things that actually weighed into it was the fact of the COVID year in 2020. The Negro League seasons were shortened, and we count in the stats from 2020 when MLB played in the COVID year. So that, I mean, really put the wheels in motion there for MLB to include that, because before that we had never seen a shortened season like that in the MLB. We're so used to 162 games. Before that we had lesser games there, but we were so used to the longer seasons that it didn't seem right or just to compare stats, because how can you compare a guy like Gibson's stats to a guy like Ty Cobb when he plays so many more games? But now we had the COVID year that has opened up the door for the Negro League stats to be included and to be compared to what we're seeing from the big leaguers there. So, maybe not as impressive, I guess you could say, say a guy in the MLB, let's just say like Shohei Ohtani comes out and he hits 360 or 372. He hits 373, right? Batting average over 162 or even 370. I mean, this is how hypotheticals, right? It's very hard to do, but just say it's even like a 370 batting average over 162 games. Now, is that comparable to Josh Gibson's 372 batting average over lesser games? A lot of people would argue that, but this is MLB's way of saying, hey, we're going to, like Rob Manfred said, recognize what the Negro League stood for and what they helped to develop into the big leagues, especially, like he said, Jackie Robinson making his debut there with the Dodgers in 1947. So a special committee on baseball records decided in 1969 to recognize 6 major league dates to 1876. The National, which launched in 1876, the American, 1901, the American Association, 1882 to 1891, Union Association in 1884, the Players League in 1890, and the Federal League in 1914 and 1915. It excluded the National Association 1871 to 75, citing an erratic schedule and procedures. So, I mean, the big thing, like I said, was the factor in of the 2020 COVID year. That was the biggest factor in this entire thing. The condensed season of 60 games there, that also, prompted them to think about that Negro League schedule and how it's a little bit shorter there. Looking on the outside of just looking at Gibson's stats there, we will see some of the other stats be upgraded there. The standards for season leaders are the same for Negro Leagues as the other leagues. 3.1 plate appearances or 1 inning for each game played by a player's team. Gibson's 974 slugging percentage in 1937 becomes the season record, and Barry Bonds' 863 in 2001 actually dropped to 5th in the rankings. It now trails Moore's Suttle's 877 in 1926, Gibson's 871 in 1943, and Smith's 870 in 1929 there. Bond's prior OPS record of 1.421 in 2004 dropped to 3rd behind Gibson in 1937 and 1943 at 1.474 in 1937 and 1.335 in 1943. Willie May, and then, you're going to take some bonuses out of this too for some of the major league hitters, stats that they had while they're playing in the Negro Leagues. You look at guys like Willie Mays. He's actually going to gain 10 hits from his time with the Birmingham Black Barons there in 1948. Minnie Mimosa, he surpassed 2,000 hits, credited with 150 when he played for New York. Robinson, who broke MLB's color barrier, like we know, was actually credited with 49 hits. 49 more hits than what he had. And then Satchel Paige actually gained 28 wins, raising his total over his career to 125. So, you look at some of these guys who never actually played in the bigs getting stats now into the record books, but then you also look at guys who did, in fact, play in the bigs. They're actually going to gain some stats there going into that book. So they're going to, maybe a guy, like I said, Minosa there, he's going to actually surpass 2,000 hits. So that puts him in a different echelon of players then too. So, I mean, love, hate, wherever you're at on the idea of bringing in those stats to the books. I think it's a cool thing. I really do. I think it's a cool thing that they're bringing these stats in. I could just see it causing some issue, and I don't know how it would, realistically cause a lot of issues. My only thought, I guess, was saying the length of seasons would be the only thing that people might argue down the road is that, like, say this guy played 155 games and he hit 370. Like I said, like I was talking before, there was some of the hypothetical stats. Just, it's crazy to think a guy could do that. I mean, that's crazy to think that a guy did that back in the day. But, I mean, if they did that in today's day and age and he played 155 games, to sustain that over 155 games over 60 is different, right? It is, I guess, a little bit more of an accomplishment, right? But it's not to take away from what these other guys have done throughout history. I'm not trying to say we're going to take away from what Gibson did with all of his historic numbers, because this guy put up some historic numbers. We're talking about OPSs over 1.4. Like, that's crazy. And a slugging of 900. Like, that's wild. That's a crazy stat in its own. And I'm not trying to take away from that. All I'm saying is that you could see guys or, people down the road, historians, whatever you want to say, where they're going to argue, that factor of it, that, maybe this doesn't seem as legible just because of the lesser games. And, can you say they're wrong, in their thought? No, I can't see it as saying they're wrong in their thought of that. So then do you almost classify it in two different ways, right? Do you almost classify it as all of the stats? Like, you can go into the MLB.com right now and you can classify your stats by all of baseball. You can classify it by NL. You can classify it by AL. Maybe they do that. Maybe they go all of baseball, right? All of baseball. And then they go, leaders by year, or leaders by, we could do the association, the Major League Association, and then you can throw in those Negro stats into there. So they're still in the MLB archives, but still have a way that you can separate out the stats to see kind of the differences of the two leagues and everything like that. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they really compare all these stats, just because of like I said, I mean, the longevity of seasons and everything like that, and being able to sustain that success along the way. That would be my only thing that I would want to, that I would expect might come out of this, is people's displeasure with the length of seasons that one guy played versus another, and the stats that they put up in that time. That would be the only thing that I could foresee being an issue in this. I mean, games were a little bit shorter back, and you had lesser games back in the day. But if we look at like Ty Cobb, we look at his stats along the way, and you're talking about a guy who, I mean, statistically was nuts. I'm just looking at the stats here, but you're looking at a guy who played 100 plus games every time, or every season there. He had some lesser years there, but you're talking about a guy who played in a boatload of games, and now we're talking about taking away some of his top batting stats just simply. And that comes down to the comparison then. Could you realistically separate this thing era to era too, right? That's where it gets tough, because you look at today's era versus the past era, different hitting, different styles, whatever you want to say. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at games played there by the Negro Leagues by Josh Gibson. I just looked him up there, Josh Gibson there. And, 68 games in 1933. And this does not take away from what he did in those games because, you can only play the games that are in a schedule. 20 home runs in 39 games is ridiculous, though. 1937, 20 home runs in 39 games. The guy was ridiculous. I'm not going to say he wasn't a fantastic player and a fantastic hitter. I just think, it's tough. It is going to be, a tough thing to adjust to a lot of people who are trying to, get themselves accustomed with the stats and, the new stats being influenced into the books there. So with that, that's about all I got on that end. I just wanted to mention that, kind of talk about it a little bit there because it is going to be an interesting thing when they throw in those stats to see how much stats move around then. Who gets up to the top in this category now, who may drop a little bit. Like I talked about Bonds there. Bonds is dropping a couple spots in a lot of categories. Like that's something interesting to see there when you compare stat to stat, how much guys are going to drop there. So I'm interested once those come out there to see kind of where everybody, sits when it's all said and done. But with that, just touching into the NBA real quick, I just wanted to touch into the NBA. We saw, like I said before, we saw the Timberwolves. They took Game 4 in Dallas. Now they will face again in Game 5. This will be back in Minnesota there. 105-100 was the final in that one. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Lively he did leave the game against the Wolves there. That definitely did not help out the Mavs in a back-and-forth matchup there. Did not help them out. We did see Anthony Edwards play a little bit better in this game for the T-Wolves. He had 29 there. Towns had 25. A lot of scoring there from the starting lineup. Luka, he didn't get 30. Usually he's good for 30. He had 28 in this one. Kyrie was 16. Little lesser scoring across the board there for him, and a big loss with Lively there. Not able to go anymore for the Mavs. So that was a big blow. A big blow for the Mavs not having Lively out there for Game 4. But Game 5 shifts back to Minnesota there. Maybe we see the T-Wolves extend this thing out to 6. Or we could see the Mavs moving on to take on the Boston Celtics, who swept the Pacers right out of the NBA playoffs. And, in very impressive comeback, like, we might bend, but we're not going to break fashion. Played a couple of close games with the Pacers there, able to pull it out. Had some deficits against the Pacers, and were able to come back in those games. And hats off to them. I didn't want to see the Pacers advance any further than that. I was all good with the sweep there, and we saw it. We saw a sweep by the Boston Celtics, who will now wait 10 days off before they will have Game 1 of the NBA Finals. They are waiting on the winner of the Mavs and T-Wolves, who may burn themselves out before they'll get to play against that Celtics team. So, that's about all there for the NBA. That's all I want to talk about NBA-wise. Good stuff, like I said, coming out of that Pacers series. I wanted to see the Pacers lose. Sorry for Pacer fans out there. Not really, but I'm going to pretend like I'm sorry. The Pacers played a good NBA playoffs. They played a good playoffs. The only thing that I ever took against them was I did not see them play a healthy team throughout the playoffs. Now, that's not to take away from some of their performances, some of the great shooting that they had throughout the tournament or throughout the playoffs there. That's not to take away from that. It just really, it really bit me that, we had teams advancing that weren't really seeing healthy teams. And that was, the Pacers' path. Now, you can only play who's in front of you. You can't control injuries. You got to play who's out there. I get that. I'm not taking anything away with that. I'm just saying I would have been more impressed if the Pacers would have beat the Bucks with a healthy Giannis and a healthy Bucks team. Or, even a semi, you're not healthy come playoffs, but a semi-healthy Bucks team. And then even looking at the Knicks, having one of the 7 guys who were injured or whatever it was, playing in that one. There was just injury-riddled teams throughout the East. And I'm not saying that neither one of these teams, the Celtics or the Pacers, didn't play good basketball throughout the playoffs. I thought they had stretches where they played some fantastic basketball. It wasn't as gauntlet. It wasn't as much of a gauntlet as what it is looking at the West. The Western Conference, and that was all season. The Western Conference just looked that much better. And I mean, you're talking about a team in the Mavs right now who are the 5th seed, and they're currently sitting in the Western Conference Finals with a 3-1 lead. Like that's how good the West was. Is that you could have realistically seen one of the top 5 teams getting into that Western Conference Finals. I mean, you're talking about OKC, the Timberwolves. You're talking about the Nuggets there. You're talking about the Mavs. And then you look even earlier, I don't know if I would say the Phoenix Suns really had a, massive chance, but the Clippers played some pretty good basketball this year. You could have potentially seen them. And then the Lakers, I'm not going to venture as far as the Lakers there to say that they would have had much of a shot. But you're talking about, that top 5 teams, you could have potentially seen every single one of them making some noise in the playoffs. And that's just how good the West was. The East kind of shook out the way that you expected it, except if you were a betting man at the beginning of the season, then you picked Dame and Giannis, right? You picked Dame and Giannis to be in that Eastern Conference Finals. And, well, you got an injured Giannis entering the playoffs, and you got an injured Dame basically in the playoffs, and an injured Chris Middleton in the playoffs. So, like I said, not take away from what the Pacers did in the playoffs. Hats off to them to a fantastic shooting run in the playoffs. It's just it finally ran out of steam, and they ran into a very stingy defensive team in the Boston Celtics who finally said enough's enough. We're going to take you guys on, and we're not scared of you on the offensive end. And Boston did their thing, and they were able to control the series and swept the Pacers right out of it. Right out of it there. So with that, before we move on, I want to get to that Brewers-Cubs game from last night. Before we get there, I want to mention some sponsors of the show here quick. First, Game Day Supply in Alaska. Do you have a sports club or team? Are you looking for some sweet custom uniforms or apparel? Check out the awesome crew at Game Day Supply in Alaska to help your team get the sweetest gear. Find them on Facebook at Game Day Supply or online at GameDaySupply.net. Also, Sport and Spine Clinic in Greenwood, Wisconsin. If you've been injured recently, whether at work, whether it was pushing the lawnmower, maybe you were gardening, maybe you were walking out to see some of the weather that's been going on, and you just felt something pop. I don't know what you were doing, but you felt something pop. And you will think you might need some physical therapy. You stop in there at Sport and Spine Clinic and see Chad. He will get you right. He'll get you back to work, back pushing the mower, back in the garden, whatever it is. He'll get you back there. Sport and Spine Clinic in Greenwood, Wisconsin. Marshfield Motor Speedway is located just 3 miles outside of Marshfield on County Road H. You got to get down there this summer. Tons of family fun for all ages. Great food, great drinks, great atmosphere. I cannot name a better place that you got to be than Marshfield Motor Speedway. So get yourself down to the track. Find the schedule. Search them up on Facebook or online. Just search Marshfield Motor Speedways. Otherwise, go to my Facebook page, Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. Give it a follow. Every time they share the schedule, I share the schedule. You'll see it on my Facebook page. I shared the full schedule there on Facebook, but otherwise, you got to find it there. I'll share it every week as I see it come across on Facebook. So get yourself down to the track there. Marshfield Motor Speedways in Marshfield, Wisconsin. Sports Scene, sports cards, and memorabilia located in the Marshfield Mall in Marshfield, Wisconsin. You got to get down there and see Al. He has everything you need, from sporting cards to memorabilia, jerseys, model stock cards. He's got it all. Sports Scene in Marshfield, Wisconsin. Pittsville Farm and Home Center. At the store, they serve you anything from hydraulic hoses to red roses. Stop in and see the awesome crew at Pittsville Farm and Home Center in Pittsville, Wisconsin. And also your hometown team, Century 21 Gold Key Realty. Call Peggy Sue or Anna to find your dream home, or if you're looking to sell. Find them on Facebook at your hometown team, Century 21 Gold Key Realty, or stop in and see them at their location in Marshfield, Wisconsin there. But with that, well, the Brewers didn't get no hit, right? We're taking our wins with our losses with that one. I tell you what, watching that game last night, I'm sitting there on the couch, a little bit of a later night last night, sitting there on the couch and just settling in. And I was like, I got to turn on the Brewers, right? I got to turn on the Brewers. I got to watch this. Hopefully they don't get no hit. That's the big hope, right? And I'm sitting there watching it, and Willie Adames comes to the plate there. And I was like, okay, hoping for the best here, hoping for the best. And he hits that shot out to right center. And I was like, yes. Thank goodness, right? We're going to get a run. We're going to tie this thing up. It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay there. Well, Cody Bellinger, who looks like he was just hanging outside smoking a doobie with the boys, goes up, robs a bomb, right? Robs a bomb. I don't know how he can. His eyes look like they're closed every time he's walking around. But he goes up, robs it. Great play by Cody Bellinger. I will give him props on that one. Great play by Cody Bellinger. And in that moment, I said to myself, we're getting no hit today. I don't know what it's, and I wanted to be as optimistic as I could be, right? You always want to be as optimistic as you can be, no matter if it's a 10-1 game, or if it's 5-2, right? You want to be as optimistic as you possibly can that there's still a shot, right? The diehard fans are like, there's still a shot. Throw the rally cap on, drink a couple more beers, whatever it is, drink a beer out of a shoe. I don't know, whatever weird things you're into out there. I mean, there's, you always want to be that optimistic person, but I have, throughout the years, it always seems that when there's a no-hitter, there's that one play that a guy makes a diving stop, a diving catch, a, fantastic throw, whatever it is. There's always that one play that they look back on, they say that was the no-hitter saving play, right? There it seems like there's always one, right? In that moment, I was like, that's it. That's the game-saving no-hitter moment that I just you always dread it, but it's the one that you remember, right? And I was like, crap. This is it. This is it. And the crazy part, and I don't know if it's as much crazy or sucky as, but I thought Ben Brown for the Cubs pitched a good game, right? I don't think he was dominant. The stats are going to tell you that dude was dominant, right? But I've seen some dominant performances. Verlander, Jacob deGrom, you look through the history. Max Scherzer, I've seen him have some dominant outings there. Kershaw, when he's on, right? When he's on, there's sometimes that Kershaw is a giant stinker, right? But when he's on, Kershaw, and you could go through a lot of names of guys who have thrown no-hitters through the years where you look at their stuff and it's wild, right? It's some crazy good stuff. The breaking ball was on. Everything was on. And I'm not going to say that Ben Brown's breaking ball wasn't on, but I cannot... The Brewers went up there and they were guessing. They were in an 0-2 hole before the count even started. That's what the big thing... And I was talking to my one buddy there off the Brew Pod, Between the Lines podcast, Brewers podcast there. And we were chatting back and forth during the game and everything like that. And, it was a lot of we're going to watch pitches and, guessing at pitches, guessing on fastballs. And it's not like his fastball is overly dominant. I mean, 95, 96, nothing crazy velocity-wise, right? I mean, still hard stuff, but not crazy velocity, not a lot of movement on the fastball, just pretty much straight as an arrow. And the Brewers were under it. They were, they were ahead of it. They were behind it. Whatever it was, they were guessing on it. And hitting in the major leagues is tough. I'm not going to say it's not. I just, hitting's, you almost want to say hitting's hitting throughout your life, right? And I just remember, you swing, you look for the fastball, you react to everything else, right? You react to everything else. And it's like the Brewers were trying to sit curveball, and they were surprised by the fastball. How are you going to hit a 96-mile-per-hour fastball up if you're not looking for it, right? If you're not looking for it. You have to almost be... And I could be far-fetched. And if I am, and you guys out there, you think different, well, I guess, using me, we think different a little bit. And that's fine. That's fine. I've just always been underneath the impression that you sit fastball, you think fastball, and you react to the curve, right? And it's not like he was throwing, anything crazy outside of those two pitches in this game here. I mean, it was predominantly the knuckle curve, and it was predominantly the fastball that had the Brewers in fits. I don't know. That's just the way that I took it. And, like I said, to take away from what Ben Brown did in this game, I don't want to do that because it was like, many know out there from, I talked about it yesterday. Ben Brown's a guy who usually goes 3-4 innings, and that's it. Before that last outing, he went 2 innings. And this is a guy who, against the Brewers, went 7 innings of no-hit baseball with 2 walks and 10 strikeouts on the game. That's a solid day at the office, right? That's a solid day at the office. I'm not going to say that his stuff wasn't working and that he wasn't doing his job, right? He was doing his job. I just thought that the Brewers were, going up there guessing wrong and trying to guess at the game. It's hard to guess, right? It's hard to guess, especially with guys in the major leagues who throw high 90s. It's even harder to guess because if you guess wrong, you're screwed. And that's where the Brewers are at. They're all up there playing this guessing game and just screwing themselves over before the pitch even comes. So I guess that was the big thing that I took. Brewers don't get no hit. That's a good thing, right? They don't get no hit. That would have sucked because they got Imanaga coming up today here. And Imanaga's pitching on a burner this year. He's got that .84 ERA. Like, the dude has pitched phenomenal to start this year. So it sure as heck would have sucked to be no hit yesterday because facing a guy like this today, that's tough. That's tough to muster across runs, as we've seen from his stats this year, an undefeated record so far, and not giving up a lot in between. It would have sucked, but just a rough game hitting for the Brewers. Sal Frelick broke through for the Brewers there late in this one, got the Brewers their first hit of the game there, and then the Brewers did tack on that run in the bottom of the ninth. Heck of an at-bat by Willy Adames. I thought he was safe sliding into second. Now, you can call me a skeptic. You can call me a skeptic. You can call me a what-if guy if you really want to, right? But, what if? What if Willy Adames is called safe? What if? Because then, that inning's extended. The momentum's in the Brewers' hands. Now we have the shot with the runner on second to win it. They tied it there with Yelich coming in. You have a shot to win it. So that was a big call at second base. I'm still not convinced he was out, but there was not a lot of good angles, first off. And then secondly, the call in the field was out. So I think that was a big influence on what the call was going to be. Also, we got to remember, umpires hate the Brewers. New York hates the Brewers. You put those two things together, the Brewers were screwed, right? The Brewers were screwed. But that even goes further then. Because in the top of the 10th, we bring in Trevor McGill, who has pitched fantastic for the Brewers this year. He has pitched fantastic for the Brewers and has developed into that closer's role. Now, I don't know exactly. I haven't seen the report on what came out of that, what came out of that injury. I was just going to try and look that up there. According to Sophia Minner on Twitter, she said that Pat Murphy said Trevor McGill did not suffer a fracture on the line drive. So, if it's not fractured, what the heck's wrong with it? It's encouraging news, right? It's encouraging news on that end because I tell you what, I've seen a lot of pitchers take some shots. That ball landed next to Trevor McGill, and I think he knew it. He didn't even make an effort to go after that baseball. He just, walked off the field. Like he was, I know this is bad. I'm walking off. I'm done. Now, what does that mean, though? Does that put him on the shelf for 10 days? Does that put him on the shelf for longer than that? What is the extent of the injury and what came out of it? Because the way that he walked off, it just, he didn't even make an effort to go after that baseball or grab that baseball. It's almost like he knew that even if he grabbed it, he wasn't going to be able to make a play, and maybe he was hoping that somebody else would come in. The tough part is that you had a runner advancing to third, so Joey Ortiz was kind of staying home, and you had a runner who was running to first base, so Owen Miller was staying home. So the two guys closest to the play were kind of out of the picture at the moment. Willy Adames and Trag, they didn't have a liability at that point or anything to go after at that point. So maybe you could have said they could have went after it there, but still that's a long run for both of them to go make the play. That was just a no man's land, bad luck, nothing you can do about play. That was tough. I think everybody was more or less confused and didn't know what to do in that moment there. Like, they saw it hit McGill. They didn't know, are we supposed to run after this? Are we supposed to go get this? Is he going to be able to grab it? Like, what the heck's going on? And the first guy to react was William Contreras, but Contreras had to cover home plate. Nobody else was there to cover home plate. So it was a bad luck, disastrous moment for the Brewers that then led to a blow-up inning of 5 runs there and ultimately led to the Brewers' loss, which I want to say it was a heartbreaking loss. But at the same time, it was just it was almost like the Brewers were lucky to still be in that game. And that's not to say that the Brewers pitching staff didn't pitch fantastic. I'm just talking on the hitting side of it. The Brewers, the way that they hit in that game with only 3 hits in total on the whole game and to be in a 1-1 game in the top of the 10th, that's, impressive in its own right? That just tells you how good the pitching staff was for Milwaukee. Freddie Peralta pitched fantastic. He just had that one bad pitch to Michael Busch there. Outside of that, 5 2/3, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks given up there, 11 strikeouts. And then we saw Jared Koenig, solid. Bases loaded jam, comes in, third of an inning with a strikeout. Paredes looks fantastic again. 1 inning pitched, 1 strikeout. Payams for an inning there, 1 hit. Then we saw Peguero for an inning there, 3 walks and 2 strikeouts, got himself out of a jam. McGill took the loss in this one with a hit, 2 runs, and 1 earned. Milner came in then, 2/3 of an inning, 4 hits, 3 earned runs, nothing else to show for it there. And then we saw White. It was like, I was talking, is Mitch White almost like waving the white flag? Like at the end, you're kind of like, we're throwing this guy in because we know it's over kind of deal. Like, is he like the white flag guy? I don't know. It's all I could think when we threw him in there at the end. But a third of an inning there, 1 strikeout. He got the Brewers out of the jam, got him up to the plate there, down 5. Brewers able to get across a couple of runs there, but dug themselves too big of a hole there to dig themselves out of, especially on a very cold offensive night for the Brewers. Talking about hits, we saw Adames with a hit there. That was the RBI for the Brewers. Outside of that, Frelick with a hit and Owen Miller with a hit. Not much else happening in this game for the Brewers. Owen Miller's was a pinch hit. I believe it was a pinch hit. Base hit for Owen Miller, and then Frelick and Adames with the other 2. Outside of that, a cold night hitting for the Brewers. You're looking at top of the lineup there, 6 strikeouts combined between all of them at the top there. Adames did not strike out in this game. That was a bonus, I guess you could say, was see Adames not strike out in this game. He's a guy who's known to chase. So to see him have a stat line with 0 strikeouts, that's a solid day. But, not great, right? You don't want to call it great. I'm not trying to call it great. But he's usually a higher strikeout rate in games like this. So, solid stuff there out of Adames. He's got that average just below 250 right now. Slowly making a climb. I'm not going to say it's great, but slowly making a climb to hopefully sitting at a consistent 250 to 260. That's where that's about what you get out of Willy Adames, is a consistent 250 to 260. You live with it, and that's just got to be okay. You talk about a guy whose career average is sitting at 247. Did not help that the past couple seasons have been killers for Willy Adames, but you're talking about a guy whose career 247. He's about where his career average is at. So this is what you expect out of him there. But with that, I wanted to get to the MLB standings, look around the league today, but we'll get to that tomorrow. We'll get to that tomorrow here on the show. I want to get to the Fresh on the Farm report tomorrow, see what's going on around the minors. We got to get to a lot of things happening around the Brewer system right now. A big one's going to be Trevor McGill. He's on the shelf, as far as I know, for a little bit, at least probably there. And what's it gonna look like for the closer's role for the Brewers? Kind of a bullpen by committee. Could we see a Brian Hudson be developed into a closer spot for him? That's going to take away from the multi-inning role that he generally plays. But could we see a guy like Brian Hudson move to the closer's role? I'm not sure. I'm hoping the Brewers. I don't want it. I want them to blow out the Cubs. I really do want them to blow out the Cubs today. But if it's not a blowout, like I'm not expecting it to be, I am hoping it's a close game with the Brewers with the lead, so I can kind of see how Pat Murphy's going to work this thing now. I want to see how Pat Murphy's going to work it now, and I can make skeptical. I can make, what I think predictions for the closer's role between Payamps and Hudson, but that's tough. I don't know. Went into the season thinking David Williams. Then it was almost a bullpen by committee with McGill and Payamps and Uribe. Now Uribe is down in AAA serving his suspension. Payamps has struggled at times this year. And Trevor McGill is now possibly on the shelf. So who does that leave? Who does that leave left? It's going to be interesting to see how Pat Murphy works his bullpen now. But with that, we got Imanaga coming up today against Bryce Wilson, a 6:40 start for that one on Bally Sports Wisconsin and the Brewers Radio Network. But with that, this has been Wisconsin Sports on the Go with Trage. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. But until I catch you guys again tomorrow, deuces.
Yeah, oh my Lord, watch me sway. Darkness falls and we all pray, hoping for the light of day. Down to the river, I have held the devil's hand, felt the weight of my own sin, burdened by the heart of man. Down to the river, down to the river.